Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the State of the University address for 2025 for Signum University. I am really excited to share with you guys some of the things that I've been thinking a lot about. This, I believe, is a really important moment. This year is a really important moment in the history of Signum University. And I'm going to try to kind of tell that story, basically. Now, in that line, let me let you know, those of you who attend my regular broadcasts will be used to the fact that I'm generally monitoring the chat and stuff, and I try to respond and integrate comments and things as I go. I'm going to be doing a little bit less of that during this because I want to focus on making sure I can get kind of scattered and disconnected when I'm doing that. So today I want to be focusing in on the story. I'm going to pause for questions. I'm really interested to hear any questions that you have or other things that you would like to hear me discuss in relationship to what I'm talking about. I'll stop once in the middle and then I'll stop again at the end, and I'll go back and I'll review your comments then. So I'm not going to be paying close attention to the chat during the talk itself. So just to let you know that that will be one thing that'll be a little bit different than usual. So the State of the University address. Let's start. As I say, I want to talk about the story because today I want to be thinking about the story of Signum University, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So let's start with thinking about who we are, who we've been from the beginning. What is Signum University and what is the point of it, essentially? What we have always been. Signum University began with a vision to increase the opportunities for education for people. It began back in 2010 when I was teaching the Silmarillion seminar, which some of you may remember, and sort of soon thereafter. That's when I really began planning for what would become Signum University. And I was really excited by the possibilities for synchronous online education. You will remember, many of you will remember back in those distant days that online education was very new and also a little more than a little sketchy, right? I mean, back in those days, the first thing you had to do when you said, "Oh, I'm doing online education," is to then convince people that you weren't some kind of con artist, right? Those were those days of online education. But again, what I loved about it, what excited me, I mean, I was to that point always just a classroom teacher. That was my job. That was what I loved. And I had no aspirations to be other than a classroom teacher. But the same thing that drew me into podcasting in the first place was the thing that I loved about online education. And about the new tools that were then becoming available, barely, for synchronous online education. What I loved about it was I could immediately see that the kind of experience that I'd always had in the classroom, the kind of teaching and learning experience that I had always loved being a part of as a student, being a part of as a teacher, was something that now could be done without the kind of boundaries, the kind of sort of what seemed like natural enough boundaries, but in the new world would begin to seem like artificial boundaries to that experience. Things like geography and time and things like that. So that was the initial impetus, why I segued from running a podcast to beginning to start an educational institution. Now, let me make one side note here because it's going to be relevant, this is going to be an applicable thing for the future vision for Signum as well. Sometimes people will say, well, okay, why do people need classes like the kinds of classes that you're running? I mean, if people need to learn, you talk about expanding learning opportunities, but people can learn anytime they want to, right? I mean, the internet has lots of stuff, right? So you're going to be able to learn. You'll have opportunities to learn. Why do we need, why classes? Why are you running classes? And my answer to that is that if everybody learned really well and effectively by surfing the internet or watching videos on the internet, then there'd be no problem. Like, that would be great. But that's not the reality. For some people, it's enough and great. Awesome. More power to them. That's fantastic. But for very many people, merely reading something, merely watching a video about something is not really enough. It has been my experience, and this has been an experience that's been affirmed time and time again, that the classroom experience, being with fellow students, being with a teacher, and being engaged in that, taking part in what I call the magic, right? The magic that happens in the classroom when you are learning alongside other people and from and with other people. There are many, many people for whom that is really an essential part of the learning process. And it is that magic, it is that classroom magic that I always wanted to facilitate. That's why I started an educational institution, because I looked around and I said, why aren't more people doing this? As online education was beginning back in 2010, everybody was trying to mechanize it, right? They were trying to say, like, how can we push it out there through the internet, learning, information out there through the internet to help people learn at scale, right? And it's like, well, okay, that's awesome. Like, again, no harm in that, but it's not the same, right? It's not the magic, right? The magic is when people come together and talk, right? When people come together in a classroom experience. Why aren't more people trying to facilitate that, trying to take that on the road, trying to use as I've been saying ever since 2010, trying to use the internet not just as a tool to distribute content, but as a tool to connect people, because the internet is really good for that. But the educational institution was not using it for that. Anyway, so this has been an essential part of the Signum vision from the beginning. Now, ultimately, many of you may remember that when I first began, I launched the educational institution under the name of the Mythgard Institute. And the reason I did that was that, again, initially, my very first impulse was to take my podcast, the Tolkien Professor podcast, and to kind of broaden it a little, potentially, to, embrace more than just Tolkien studies. Which is why I didn't, which is why I called it Mythgard Institute. Instead of something a little bit more Tolkien specific. But anyway, it was designed to be like, hey, let's do sort of formal or semi-formal classes on this stuff instead of just podcast episodes. But as I began prepping that, like from the moment I began working on it, I began to see, and experimenting with it, I began to see this has a real opportunity to change education. Like, this has an opportunity to change the way that people learn online. This is way beyond just, hey, let's do some informal, Tolkien class or class adjacent kind of situations. Let's actually make a school. Let's actually make a university. And so that's why I pivoted quite early on and changed the name. I still use the name the Mythgard Institute for my broadcasts, which are kind of class adjacent, still kind of like what I was just describing. But I founded the institution instead as Signum University. And the purpose of Signum University, and this is important, the purpose of Signum University is to share joy. This is important because our purpose is not to present learning as a means to an end. And that is what almost all education, modern education, does, is present education as a means to an end. The end being like money or prestige or something like that, right? Usually. That's not to say that one cannot achieve money and prestige. I am sure that very many of our Signum students are going to become prestigious and wealthy, and will no doubt have their Signum University education largely to thank for that. However, that isn't our purpose. That's not why we exist. Why we exist is to share joy. Joy is the heart of what we do. That's why I started it. And this is one of the central reasons why it remains the core vision of Signum University, to increase opportunities for learning for people. because more joy is always better. More joy in the sense of individual people having more joy, and in the sense of more people having joy, right? That is what drives us at Signum University. Now, but this immediately kind of brings us, I mean, I've already kind of alluded to a kind of tension between Signum University and what one normally expects to find when one hears something called a university, right? So let's pause for a second and think about the question: what is a university exactly? Let's think about how this term has been defined and what it means. Now, the word university is from the Latin, and the Latin etymology of it basically is referring to like many things becoming one, essentially. It's the same root as the word universe, of course. Now, there's not really like an exalted, thoughtful, and symbolic meaning behind this. The reason universities are called universities is basically it's like a corporation, essentially. Like the word was invented when like many small schools or colleges came together to form a kind of consortium and a sort of a legal body, right, called a university. Like this is what Oxford and Cambridge were, and the Sorbonne and everything. There were a bunch of little schools, right, a bunch of little colleges, but they banded together to form a larger administrative unit, and they called that unit the university because it was the many becoming one. As I say, that's not quite as poetic as I might like it to be, but there it was. And what was their purpose? What is the purpose of universities? Now, I'm talking about in the old days. Now, and let's think for a second, even from an American perspective, because Signum University is based in America. Most of our students are Americans. So with apologies to Oxford and Cambridge and the Sorbonne, let's think even just from the perspective of American history for a moment. What was the purpose of universities? When universities began to be founded in America in the 17th and 18th century, what was their purpose? Their purpose was to train priests and leaders. That was their purpose. Here, this is an illustrative and representative quotation from the Charter of Yale University, which was founded in, I think, 1701, very beginning of the 18th century. It was the university in the colony of Connecticut, of course. And in their charter, the charter states that it is for an institution wherein youth may be instructed in the arts and sciences, and through the blessings of Almighty God may be fitted for public employment, both in church and civil state. Now, by public employment, of course, they don't just mean like, being a bureaucrat working for the state. Like being in public employment these days means something rather different than they meant in 1701 when they talked about public employment. They're talking about leaders, whether it was religious leaders within the church or whether it was secular leaders of towns and cities and colonies, right? Anyway, yeah. So that was their purpose, was to take and train up leaders. One of the things you can see from this is that despite the similarity between university and universe, which sort of makes universities sound like they're in some sense universal, it was not universal. Universities were emphatically not for everyone, right? It was to train leadership, right? It was essentially for the elite. This is why, for instance, you can see like this is one of the reasons why almost none of the early universities accepted women, right? Because women were not involved in these higher positions of leadership that the universities were really focused on. Now, much has changed since those days in higher education. But there's a great deal that hasn't changed in higher education since those days as well. Universities may no longer be focused exclusively on training people for public leadership and church leadership. But universities are still the self-conscious gatekeepers of elitism in our society. Does that sound harsh? I don't mean it to be simply an insult. But think about this for a minute. What do universities brag about? Go to their websites, go to the website of almost any university, and look at what they push, what they proclaim about themselves, what they brag about. They brag about career training, increasing your earning power. They talk about their selectivity, how many, what percentage of their applicants they turn away. Has been for many years, one of the defining elements that sets aside, like, is this a good school? How do you know if it's a good school? Well, you know if it's a good school if they turn away, 97% of their applicants. If they turn away 90%, if they say no to 97% of people, they're a great school, right? Because only the elite, only the 3% get in, right? In other words, they brag about being the pathway to high-level careers that will not be available to you if you don't go to university. They brag about being the pathway to wealth, which you are statistically much less likely to achieve if you don't go to university. And they brag about the influence that you will have, because once you are in this community of alumni, of people in this university, you will be part of a select club. They will even use language like that to talk about this. This is how higher education markets itself. Higher education is still determined, is still defined as being for the elite. Now, again, when I say for the elite, I don't mean necessarily that they're like, I'm not trying to argue that they're discriminating against people. I'm saying that they view themselves as the gatekeepers of elitism, the gatekeepers of the elite. If you want to be elite, if you are someone who is like, from a group that has not historically been allowed into the elite, well, they'll help you to become elite, right? And so in that sense, there's like extra opportunity. But opportunity for what? To become elite. That's what, right? This is what universities are. This is how universities have come to be defined. This is what they do. Universities, in short, well, what's the metaphor? What's the most common, most famous metaphor of universities? Well, they're towers. Right? Ivory or otherwise, right? The university as tower is something that, again, that's very, very common. And maybe you can see the sea from the top. But, maybe some people, I think, see the sea from the top of the tower. But I think that the tower metaphor is quite apt. Because universities are, in fact, about separation. They're about elevation. And they're about limitation. That is, in fact, what they do. I'm teasing higher education kind of gently. Orthonc seemed perfect. Actually, this illustration struck me as entirely perfect, because Orthonc, of course, is the closest thing that we get to an academic retreat in Middle-earth, right? It is a place of study. We know that Saruman studies there, but it is a place of isolation. It is a place of separation. And it is it is a bastion of the elite, right? As you can hear from Saruman's speech to Gandalf. But of course, the image that I put here, the reason this is such a perfect image, this is of course Ted Naismith's painting of Orthonc in the Second Age. This is unfallen Orthonc, right? And of course, Orthonc means the cunning mind, right? Just like academia. This is totally fine. It doesn't have to go bad. It doesn't always go bad. Sometimes it's great. But what comes next? What comes next? I don't mean what comes next after you found a university. What I mean is, what comes next for students? I'm not here just to throw shade at traditional higher education. Really, really. That's not what I'm here to do. What higher education does, they do really well. The contributions that universities have made to human knowledge, to human society, have been massive. The degree programs that universities still run are awesome. Like, they can be really, really great. The programs of study, the opportunity to learn, it's great. I have no objection to colleges. I have one child who has graduated from college and one who's applying right now. Degree programs can be great. I'm also not here to talk about the uncertain future of higher education. Higher education, traditional higher education as it has been operating for decades, is already on the edge. In the last couple of years, one college has closed its doors permanently, on average, one every 2 to 3 weeks over the last couple of years. That is expected to accelerate, possibly sharply, as there's this whole demographic cliff coming. That is to say, where the number of students, of college-age students, is in a few years going to be very much lower than it has been, and so that is something that's likely to cause a very great deal of pain and probably sharply increased college closures. But that's not my primary focus either here today. My question is, when I say what comes next, what I mean is, what comes next for students? Even if we grant traditional higher education all of what they do, right? Especially their primary focus, of course, is on 4-year bachelor's programs, which are designed as career prep and training. And again, let's grant to them that I'm not calling that into question. That's great. Love what they do. Let them carry on doing it. But what comes next? So you've gotten your bachelor's and you're sent off into the world. Are you done learning? Do you have all the skills and knowledge you'll ever need? Even if you don't change your career at any point? Are you fully prepared for the challenges of your life? Like adulting and stuff? Once you graduate, what does traditional higher education do? What does traditional higher education offer? Well, nothing. Nothing other than graduate programs of even more limited scope and applicability, which a much smaller percentage of people go on to do, and most don't need. Where do you go to keep learning? To pursue new interests? To fill old gaps in your education? I don't know about you, but I know that there are many things that I wished that I could have studied in college, but I didn't get a chance to take those classes. And there are still classes I look back on that I wish I would have taken, but I didn't have time. Where could you go to learn the skills you need to thrive as an adult in this world? Not only do universities not help you with that after you graduate, they don't even help you that much with that before you graduate. They're focused on one thing, career prep, right? And they may do a fine job at career prep. But they don't really teach you how to thrive in the adult world necessarily. I think many a graduating senior has felt that rather keenly. I know that I did. So what comes next? Well, Signum University comes next. Where traditional higher education stops, we begin. Is there something more that you want to learn? We can teach you. Is there a skill you want to develop? We can help you. Is there a project you're wanting to accomplish? We can guide you. Traditional higher education can do career training. We'll teach everything else to everybody else. When you're ready to start your career, come to us. We're here for life, for the rest of your life. That is our goal. All of this is through our space program. What I'm pointing to is our space program. SPACE, of course, is an acronym for Signum Portals for Adult Continuing Education. Our space program is focused. Now, if you've been listening to the several-hour program that preceded this morning live, our fall space showcase, you will know that our space program consists of small modules with small groups of people and with dedicated teachers and even private one-on-one tutorials. We have an amazing amount of flexibility to teach people almost anything that they want to learn. In our initial stages, we've been doing space now for 4 years, and this program has been developed to a wonderful place. It has a magnificent capacity for being able to meet student needs, to both find out student needs and to address them. Rob Goslin, who's the director of space, Rob and I designed space in order to accomplish something that seems on the surface almost theoretically impossible for an educational institution. And that is to create a program that would provide something close to on-demand learning, but not asynchronous on-demand learning. That's easy. It's easy to build a catalog of videos that you can just send people to, right? That's not just what we do, right? We have some videos and they're awesome videos, but it's way more than that. Our program is something that is as close as we can make it to an on-demand educational program that is synchronous, that has the magic of the classroom experience. To have the magic of the classroom experience on demand, again, that is something that almost nobody even attempts. If you want on-demand stuff, you get asynchronous material. If you want live synchronous classes, well, here's our limited list of things that we can offer. And here's the rotation on which we offer them, and here are the times at which we offer them. If this doesn't work for you, we're very sorry. If you want to be part of our program, you have to conform to our schedule. That's practical. That's the way it's always worked. Rob and I got together 4 years ago and said, what if we didn't have to do it that way? What if there was another way? What if we could figure out how to enable folks to tell us what they want and then provide the magical classroom environment for people to be able to learn that in together? And that's what space is. That's what space has accomplished. And it is phenomenal. Rob Goslin and his team of staff just do a phenomenal job of interacting with students, of learning from and about their students, and of meeting all of their needs. Now, as far as what we cover, I have been saying grandiose things like we'll teach everything to everyone. Obviously, we haven't taught everything quite yet, right? We have a limited number of faculty and staff, and so in fact, our courses have in fact so far been limited. But let me tell you a little bit more. Again, if you were attending the recent session, you will have heard Rob talk about this some, but let me just review this briefly to kind of talk about what we have already focused on, the kinds of things that are already out there, inviting people to participate in. We have 5 different sectors of learning that we have developed in space. First is our fantasy literature sector. This has been the heart of what we've been doing ever since I started my podcast back in 2008 or whenever that was, 2008, 2009. So fantasy literature, Tolkien studies, and other fantasy elements, both books and films and TV shows and all kinds of things. You can do lots of fantasy stuff in space. In addition, we have had from the beginning as one of the centerpieces of what we've done in space be our language sector. Language too. when I started Signum University, when we first began offering courses back in 2011, one of the things that I was determined to do, if you know Tolkien, you will possibly know that in his professional life at Oxford, he really suffered from the antagonism between what he called lit and lang. That is the literature side of the discipline of English studies and the language side of English studies. And he was a lang guy, right? And was kind of at war with the lit guys from the beginning. This is one of the things, by the way, that both C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien found remarkable about their own friendship, is that they were on opposite sides of this political divide, who were supposed to be enemies, but they, in fact, never were enemies. From the beginning, I had a dream of reuniting lit and lang, and we've done that at Signum University. And again, this is that fantasy literature and languages have been at the core of what we've done from the beginning. Our language sector is enormously active, from places where you can learn modern languages to places where you can learn dead languages to places where you can learn imaginary languages. And what's more, we even do different kinds of language classes than I have ever seen anywhere. There are lots of places you can go to learn languages, but you know what's really hard to find? A place where you can go to maintain a language that you've learned, because as everybody knows who studied languages, you know, especially something like if you learn a language and you don't use it, you lose it. Right? Everybody knows that. And this, of course, is particularly easy to do with dead languages because you've got to read it, right, in order to maintain it. And it's easy to let that slip. It's easy to let that lapse over time. We have a whole set of modules in our language sector, which is just designed to help people who've already learned the language maintain it. They're discussion classes in Old English, Old Norse, Latin, Greek. And I'm sure we will be adding more as we go forward. Again, for people who know those languages, to be able to read some things that maybe they haven't read in those languages and to discuss them together, to keep their hand in and to keep the language and its literature fresh in their minds. So fantasy and language were always at the heart of things at Signum from the beginning, and at the heart of space too. But also from the beginning of space, there has been what Rob called in the last session one of the flagship elements of space, and that is creative writing. Creative Writing Workshop was one of the very first space modules we ever offered. And we have had an enthusiastic community of creative writers as part of the Signum community for a long time. And we had, for many years, wished to be able to facilitate more support and opportunities for creative writing. And space finally provided that opportunity, and our space creative writing faculty have been enormously creative. Indeed, our creative writing faculty and students have been some of the drivers of many of the program changes and developments that have happened in space, because they have had really exciting visions of their own of what they would like to be able to achieve in classrooms, and we've been so excited to facilitate that. It's a marvelous community. In addition, we have more recently begun to expand more our modules in general humanities. The humanities are... Study of the humanities is dying at most universities. Most universities in the world are in steady decline. You can hear news as often as you care to look for it about universities that are canceling humanities majors and cutting humanities departments and all of that sort of thing. There is enormous value in the humanities, and there is a great call, even a great need for the study of the humanities. We see Signum University as being a future home, a refuge if it needs one, for the humanities. And I am excited to see that sector of our space offerings continue to grow. And recently, as again Rob was just talking about, we have our living arts sector, because this is the kind of stuff nobody teaches. universities never even attempt. And that is how to do stuff. And it might be something like, if, for instance, we're running modules right now on public speaking and on watercolor painting. Those things are real skills that, again, it's you don't get so many opportunities to learn, especially not in a classroom environment, and especially not in one that is as flexible and responsive to your schedule and to your geography as space is. But I see the living arts sector growing and expanding a great deal in the years to come. I talked about adulting, right? And how people leave college not really knowing how to do a lot. There are a lot of things that are good to know how to do in order to thrive at life, right? And I know there are some people who are probably saying to themselves, forget college graduates. I still don't know many. I still don't feel like I am thriving in life. And I get it. There are so many things that I still would like to learn too. And I see this sector growing enormously. I would love to see space classes and tutorials available on things like gardening, automotive repair, household finance. I mean, there's all kinds of things all kinds of practical matters. And, theoretically impractical matters as well. They don't have to be crudely practical necessarily. Just gaining skills to do stuff in life. These are the things that we do, or have begun at least, to offer through our space program. And the thing that I would emphasize when talking about space, when talking about what Signum, how it is that Signum is stepping forward to fill in the educational void left by traditional higher education. Here's the principle. All higher education is continuing education. Everybody needs to continue to be educated. Believe it or not, education isn't finished, shouldn't be finished, certainly needn't be finished when you get your bachelor's degree, right? All higher education is continuing education. Signum is committing to it, and we're not ashamed of it. Degree programs are not the only real education. I mean, it might be closer to the opposite. Degree programs are a really narrow, really specialized subset of education. It is true that is how universities have been defined. Institutions that run these rigid degree programs which are designed for career preparation. But that's not education, and I certainly don't think that is all what universities are designed to be. Now, we are far from disdaining degree programs. As I said before, degree programs are awesome. I love degree programs. We have our own graduate school too. I, of course, founded our master's degree program in language and literature way back in 2011. It is still running, and it is still great. I love hearing from our students. One of my favorite things every year at Mythmoot, our big annual event, concerning which, more in the subsequent session after I finish the State of the University talk. At Mythmoot every year, we have our Signum graduation ceremony, where the master's degree students and graduate diploma students who have completed their degrees in the previous year receive their diplomas, and we hear about the thesis projects that they did, and we hear from the students, and we hear from their faculty, and I love it. It is so exciting to hear about the wonderful things our students and faculty are doing in our graduate program. Our graduate school is phenomenal, and I'm going to be talking about our graduate school. We're going to have a whole session on our graduate program a little bit later on today, probably about 3:15 or so. Fairly precisely, I'm I'm going to be right on schedule today. But anyway, so like for people who want a deep dive into our core areas of scholarship, Tolkien studies, Germanic philology, imaginative literature, meaning fantasy and science fiction, and classical, medieval, and Renaissance lit, our graduate program is a marvelous opportunity and provides learning opportunities for people to dig into that who would very likely not be able to. And this is something, our graduate school is something I still hope to see expand. The day will come when our graduate school is going to embrace not just language and literature, but also other humanities at the very least. I would love to, again, we want to foster not just the survival, but the continuing growth of the humanities in the years to come. Now, I know that many of you are asking, in fact, I was just asked this past weekend. Last weekend, I was in Cincinnati for our Ranger Moot, and I was just asked there by somebody, are we going to have a bachelor's program? Are we ever going to do a bachelor's, an undergrad program at Signum? And the answer is maybe. I think that might happen. If I had to guess, I'd say probably, but not right now. That's not the focus right now. What are we doing right now? What is our focus right now? Putting the universe in university. That's our focus right now. At Signum, we're not building a tower. We are building a village. We're not trying to separate ourselves from the rest of the world. We're not focusing in on this narrow and distinct channel, right, which is the pathway, to the elite. We are welcoming in everyone, no matter where they are in their lives, no matter what they're wanting to study or why they're wanting to learn it. And we are inviting them to learn. The metaphor that I think of when I think of Signum, we're not building a tower, we're building a village, as I say. If you've seen, this is the image, the sort of theme image for our fundraising campaign this year. I wanted to come back and sort of explain this a little bit, because this is the story that underlies it here. As you can see in this picture, this is a kind of metaphorical image of Signum University. We've been around for 14 years, but we're still kind of living in tents. We're a tent city at Signum University. We don't have much that's very fancy, right? But we've got great people, and we do great stuff in our little tent city, right? Our little tent village. What we are ready for, what it's time for, is settling down and digging foundations. We know who we are. We have found the place. In the wanderings that we've been doing, and I'll come back to the wanderings in just a second. In our wanderings, we have found who we are. We have found the need that we need to be filling. And we know where we're going. We know what we want to do. And we're marking out the streets where we're going to be constructing our permanent village. And we're making some detailed plans about what that future is going to look like. And it's a pretty exciting time. And of course, our theme, our motto for this year's campaign is "Not all those who wander are lost." We've been wandering. We've been doing a lot of things at Signum University. We've experimented with many things because from the start, we have been driven by the vision to maximize learning opportunities for people. So we've experimented over the years with different ways of doing that. We have now found in our wanderings, we have found where we want to be. Now, let's talk about Signum's wandering time, by which I mean, of course, our accreditation process. By which I mean, of course, the last 14 years. When I started Signum University, when I founded it in 2011, I started with what I knew, which is degree programs. I was a college professor. That's where I started. Again, the priority was always increase opportunities for learning. At Signum, we've never bragged about the number of people that we turn away from our program. I can say that with pretty solid confidence, right? That's never who we've been. Our attitude at Signum has always been, if you want to learn, we want to teach you. And this has been something that has been a trademark of the Signum learning community, is passion and enthusiasm. This is one of the reasons why people love teaching at Signum, because the classroom experiences are amazing, because the vast majority of people who teach in higher education have never taught courses where all of the students in the course are only there because they really want to be there and they really want to learn. That is a golden opportunity, which is simply not available to the vast percentage of higher education faculty in today's world. So here was the plan. From the beginning, the Signum plan was, we're going to start with one small graduate program, our MA program. We have no endowment. We've never had any endowment. We've had donations. We've been supported annually by our annual fund, which is phenomenal, but we've never had an endowment. That is money invested and we're living, the interest off that endowment is contributing to us. And it's this big, huge safety. We've never had a safety net. Signum has never operated with a safety net. I knew that our income would be low because Signum tuition is designed to be low, is intended to be low. It's one of the plans from the beginning, because it's one of the things about higher education that I wanted to change in order to increase people's opportunities for learning. One of the things that prevents people learning, one of the things that makes it almost impossible, if not actually impossible, for most people to go back to universities and learn more after they graduate, is that it's too expensive for them to do that. Only, the promise of greatly increased earning power that comes with a college degree can justify the cost of that college degree. You can't just do that for fun. So our tuition has been aggressively set low, which is fine because it's designed for scale. At a larger scale, the lower tuition that we have will be perfectly adequate for our institutional revenue. But we knew it was going to be low to start with, that we were unlikely to begin at a very large scale of students. And indeed, we didn't, and we haven't. We applied for state authorization and for accreditation. And the plan was, when we clear we'll clear those hurdles as fast as we possibly can, right? So that we can become totally accepted in the mainstream. And then when we get there, we can expand. That was plan A for Signum University. And then we stepped out onto the road. And when we did it, that's where we thought we were going when we stepped out into the road. But we've made many discoveries since then in our wandering time, and we've been swept off our feet. One, as I've mentioned, is the development of the space program 4 years ago. 4 years ago this month, basically. It was at the State of the University address 4 years ago that we announced space for the first time. I think especially with the recent integration of the tutorials program, so that now we not only have the opportunity for people to learn in the small group modules that we have at Space, but even to request individual one-on-one instruction or one-on-one mentoring with projects. I am now really excited. Like, I feel like we've got the complete package, right? We have an educational package like nobody else offers. We've found a new and more dynamic way through Space to fulfill the original vision for Signum University, that vision of increasing opportunities for learning. Our power to do that now with Space, especially with tutorials, is so great. We're increasing opportunities. See, originally, I was thinking about increasing opportunity when I was thinking about increasing opportunities for learning back in the day. I was thinking about it in terms of people who want to get degrees but can't because they can't afford it or it's too far away or something. Well, we can use the online medium to enable them to have an awesome educational experience despite, and overcome those things that are boundaries elsewhere. And that all is still true, right? But again, through space, we have discovered a whole different dimension of increasing learning opportunities. And that is by offering those opportunities to orders of magnitude more people, because there are only so many people who need or want a specific degree program. There are a lot of people in the world who still want or need to learn. As wonderful as graduate degrees are, and we still love them, they're only ever going to be for a small minority of people. I mean, that's just the fact of things. Through space, and now also with tutorials, we have found the way to optimize learning opportunities. We can teach anyone anything they want to learn. Now, meanwhile, so again, that final stage of our discovery process happened 4 years ago. Meanwhile, this whole time, we've been applying for accreditation. We were approved by the state of New Hampshire in February 2019. That is when we were approved by the Higher Education Commission in the state of New Hampshire. So we were, we got the official stamp of approval by the status quo as represented by my state here, where Signum is officially based. We were authorized by the state legislature. A bill was passed in the state legislature of New Hampshire, which was an adventure, in 2021. And it was signed into law by the governor of New Hampshire with this pen. I still have the souvenir pen from good old Governor Sununu, who's no longer our governor now, but he signed our bill into law. You can look Signum University up in the laws of the state of New Hampshire, and you will find us there. After that, we entered the accreditation process. And here in the accreditation process, we were hit with delay after delay. There was a lot of friction in the accreditation review process. Many delays and referrals and repeated reviews. Like we would have a review and they'd be like, no, we need to review you again. And then we'd, please give us this stuff, and we'd give them that stuff, and they'd be like, no, we need to review you again. This kept happening and happening and happening. Because it turns out there were many ways in which, unsurprisingly, we did not fit the model of traditional higher education. Now, some of these items of friction in our accreditation process were sort of small but revealing. We kind of tried to push them aside or tried to kind of massage them. But they were, to me, always clear indications that we don't fit. We clearly don't fit. There are big gaps. These are small things that show big gaps between what we're setting out to do and what traditional higher education assumes about educational institutions. Let me give two quick examples. One, graduation rate. So one of the things that accreditors care very much about is your demonstrated graduation rate, the percentage of people who graduate from your program within 4 years of beginning it. Now, you'll notice the 4-year thing, also within 5 years, also within 6 years. Those three percentages, right? You'll see, by the way, the obvious bias towards bachelor's degrees, right? The 4-year degree program, which is the cornerstone of traditional higher education. But more than that, why is it? Why is it that accrediting bodies, that the educational bureaucracy, which is the accreditation process, why do they care so much about graduation rates? Well, that's fairly clear, actually. And by the way, in its way, wholly admirable, because it's about consumer protection, right? College is very expensive. So if schools are taking money from people year after year, and people are unable to graduate, like if that's a big pattern, if you're not achieving at least a certain percentage of people graduating within 4 years or 5 years or even 6 years. If your percentages are really, then that's a big old red flag, right? That maybe you're kind of ripping people off, in fact. So again, it's a very sensible, it's a very laudable even element of consumer protection. But see, here's the problem. At Signum, we don't have a rigid 4-year program. We are teaching people throughout their lives. We don't mind how long people take. We've had people take, what is the current record? 10 years? Maybe 11 years, I think, might be the current standing record for how long it took someone between the semester they took their first class and the semester in which they graduated. Because you know what our students are doing? Living, working jobs, having families, right? A lot of our master's students don't take more than one class a year and take time to finish things. And you know what? We don't mind. We encourage them to go at their own pace. We encourage them to, because we're not taking money from them. We don't charge our tuition annually, right? So that however many years you're paying X amount of tuition, we only charge by the classes that you take. We're not trying to take people's money. So there's no question, like there's no issue of consumer protection. There's no issue of, people being charged less or more or getting their money's worth or anything. That's just not how we run things at Signum University. What's more, we have a lot of students who really dislike the whole graduation concept. I remember way back when we first began graduating our first cohorts of students. I remember having a conversation with one of our original students who began studying with us in our very first semester. And she said, I just realized, does this mean I have to stop taking classes now? I don't want that. Can I keep taking classes? And I'm like, well, it's a little awkward because the accreditors really actually quite insist that you stop taking classes now. Because again, my point is it was revealing of just ways in which we're different. Our operations are different. Our whole relationship with our students is different from the operation of traditional higher education. Another example of this sort of friction that emerged. There's a whole segment, like the accreditation process, like there's this whole huge massive document that gives the outline and instructions for the whole huge, really massive document that you have to, your institutional self-study that you have to prepare and everything, all the information that you have to give them. There's a whole section of it dedicated to career outcomes of your students. And again, the purpose of this, once again, quite laudable consumer protection. That is, they are making rigorously certain that if you promise something to your students, if you say, if you get this degree, you will earn this much money, or if you say, if you get this degree, you'll qualify for this career, can you back that up? Can you prove that you actually are delivering on that promise? That's excellent. I'm very glad that those questions are being asked because, of course, those promises are being made everywhere in higher education, well, almost everywhere in higher education. Not here, not at Signum University. And the career outcomes element of the accreditation process has a special place in my heart because I think it's the only fight I won. There are places where I achieved Pyrrhic victories in the back and forth with our accreditors, but career outcomes was the only place where I won a clear and undisputed victory because they said, they're like, please provide data to demonstrate how, what the career outcomes of your graduates are and how you how you can back up with data the claims you make about their career outcomes. To which I responded, Signum University does not and never has made any claims about career outcomes for our students. We promise them nothing whatsoever. And so I have no data to give you and I have no outcomes to show you. And by golly, the bureaucrats looked at our website and they combed it through And they came back to us and said, you know what? You're right. You actually don't make any claims about career outcomes for your students, so we will consider you exempt from this section. It's the only section of their whole document that we succeeded in making ourselves exempt to, though I don't think it's the only one that we ought to have been exempt from. But in any case, my one victory. But again, you see what a huge difference just in orientation of our institutions that points to. So again, all of these ways we were different. The accreditation process, the review process, trying to explain to them who Signum University is, and why they could be confident in us was not easy because we were different. There was one larger thing. There was one larger recurring theme that kept tripping up the reviewers. What are all these other programs? Right? They're like, you advertise all these audit programs for your grad courses. What's this space thing? Right? I will never forget. One of the reviewers said in their analysis, in their evaluation of us, it was like an intermediate stage, or rather it was like the second version of the early stage, when they made us do it again. He said, this is a direct quotation. He said, these other programs like space, you advertise them right on the website as if it was a part of the university. Do you hear that? As if it were a part of the university. Those were his exact words. That is so revealing about the assumptions that they are making about what a university is and what a university should be. Now, on the one hand, this is a little odd, and kind of besides the point of the whole evaluation. Lots of universities run non-credit bearing programs. It's not that unique. Like there are buckets they could kind of put that in their heads, right? Like it's not as weird as they kind of made it out to be. And also, of course, one is inclined, and indeed, I tried as gently and politely as possible to say something along the lines of, please evaluate our graduate program on its merits, please and thank you, which is what this evaluation is sort of supposed to be doing. But at the same time, there was also kind of something to it. That is something to the way in which our space program especially, but our auditing programs and other initiatives, the Collaboratory and stuff, why these kind of tripped our reviewers up. And that is, throughout the accreditation process, there is a sense in which we as Signum University were always kind of trying to appear something that we really weren't. Namely normal. We were trying to appear a little bit more normal than really we were. Our graduate program, like we were building a little tower, right? And throughout the process, we were kind of saying essentially like, so just ignore the rest of the village. Right? Pay no attention to the rest of the village. Just focus, if you would, please, on this little tower that we're building in the middle, which does not look like a normal tower. We kept pushing through the accreditation process. And eventually, thanks to heroic efforts from several people, and especially the amazing Faith Acker, who was our graduate studies director at the time, we got to the very final stage of the accreditation process. After 5 years in the accreditation process alone, it was like more like 8 years in the evaluation process as a whole. 5 years in accreditation and tens of thousands of dollars in fees paid. We had our final review when we came before the accrediting commission for ultimate approval for accreditation. The evaluation of our academic program was excellent. Reviewers had nothing but high praise for our graduate program, for our courses, our faculty, our students, especially our students, actually. They were just marveling at how engaged, how passionate our students were about their Signum studies. And I'm like, I know, they're really awesome, aren't they? But the decision that the accreditors made was to defer us again, mandating yet another year of delay and another round of review accompanied by more very expensive fees. What were their grounds? So they loved our academic program. Why would they do that? Because we were not rich enough. we didn't have enough money. Now, on the one hand, that's fair enough, I guess. I, too, don't think we have enough money and didn't think at that time that we had enough money. We definitely don't have very much money. But that was their reason. We don't have enough money. We withdrew at that point because we were basically considering that sinking even more of our time and spending tens of thousands of dollars more on fees would be unlikely to help us make a contingency fund materialize within 4 months, which is what their deferral calendar required of us. So we withdrew. And now, when I look back at the whole situation of sort of where we are and where we've come to in the accreditation process, I can't regret it. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating because we earned it. We earned it, and Signum University and our graduate program richly deserves accreditation. But at the same time, it was also liberating because now we are done pretending to be normal. We're done playing along with traditional higher education. We are going to build our village. We are different from any other university in the world, and we're proud of that. We are redefining what a university is, and we are not going to apologize for that. Because it's time for a change in education in this country and worldwide. People need more than just rigid degree programs, the things that traditional higher education offers. The higher education of the future is responsive to the changing needs of widely diverse student populations. The higher education of the future is available to people throughout their lives for all of their learning needs. We have already given this future a foothold in reality. The higher education of the future is Signum University. Okay, I've come to my first pause. I think it's an uneven sort of pause. I'm more than halfway through. But let me pause here to look at questions and to take any questions that you guys have. Okay, so questions, things that you would like me to address here before I move on. I'm kind of skimming back through, but that's going to be hard to skim through completely. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Everett was asking how busy is the commission. Are there that many higher education institutions in New Hampshire? No. The state of New Hampshire has never been the problem. We are still approved by the state of New Hampshire. We have a good relationship with the Higher Education Commission in the state of New Hampshire. Accreditation is a completely separate process, and it is a nationwide process. It's not about the states. So it's and by the way, accrediting bodies are not government. They are NGOs. They are non-government organizations. They are non-government organizations, but they fulfill the mandates of the Federal Department of Education, to which there are changes underway right now, of course, as all of you know, here in America. This has already created changes. The state of New Hampshire has already changed its laws in response to the changes at the federal level on the DOE. It used to be that the state of New Hampshire saw its approval as subsidiary to the federal approval given through the accreditation process, which was overseen by the Federal Department of Education. That was why in the old laws, the laws under which we were approved originally, one of the criteria, one of the requirements of New Hampshire approved institutions of higher education is that they had to pursue and ultimately eventually achieve accreditation. Again, like basically they said, like, we will approve you, but you have to get accredited. You have, our authority isn't enough. You need the authority of the federal DOE as well. That's the law that they changed. as of now, as of 2025, in the state of New Hampshire, you're no longer required to achieve accreditation. State approval is deemed by the state to be sufficient. And I think that is an excellent change. What is this going to look like? I'm not going to spend a lot of time speculating about the future of accreditation, other than to say it's obviously changing. The Federal Department of Education has been the cornerstone of the accreditation process. And the Federal Department of Education is at the very least changing radically. And as I say, with the example of the state, New Hampshire is not the only state in America that has already changed its laws, because the momentum in education administration in America is to push higher education administration away from the federal level and down to the state level, to allow states to, because they're already doing it, so that we don't have to duplicate that process. And it's literally duplicated. The process that we went through with the state of New Hampshire and the process that we went through with the accreditors are almost the same process. They're actually they're modeled, they're designed to be repetitions of each other. And so one of the things that the federal government is currently saying is, why do that? Let the states handle it. What will be the long-term consequences of that? What will that mean for accreditation as an institution moving forward? What will that mean for the usages for which Signum University, by which Signum University has been restricted because we don't have accreditation? Are some of those doors going to open up in the absence of accreditation? I think that's very likely, but it's early days yet. We don't really know how that's going to go. Phil, it's not about being retroactive. Like, from now on, we're not required. So they are not requiring us to, I've been officially informed by the Higher Education Commission of the state of New Hampshire that we are if instead of being accredited by a federally approved body, we want to just continue our review, we'll still have to go through regular 5-year reviews with the state of New Hampshire. But if we just want to do that, we can, which is great. Again, we've had wonderful relationships with the state of New Hampshire. Really grateful for all of their support over the years. Anyway, so I don't know what's going to come of it in the end, but that's sort of where things are. And it's another reason why, when I look back on the frustration of the accreditation process and our deferral and eventually our withdrawal, it's another reason why it's a little harder to feel upset about it now than it might have been a year and a half ago. And that's because, first of all, you know what happens when you get accredited? When you get accredited, you are then required to pay dues to the NGO, to the company that is running the accrediting process, and they charge you a percentage of your tuition annually, in addition to a fee. So it's a large chunk of money that we would have to be sending to them every year. And again, it's from where I'm sitting right now, I would quite like to make sure that that cost is worth it. I'm no longer sure what we would be getting for that money anymore. So again, there are lots of reasons why I am much happier with where we are now. Now, does this mean we are, thumbing our noses at the accreditors from now on? No, it does not mean that. Do I think that Signum will very likely, yes, it should the federally oriented accreditation process in fact persist? I believe that the day will come when we will complete that process again. But I am going to wait to see how that all falls out, and B, I am not gonna pretend to be normal anymore in the course of doing that. Tanker to T wants to know, what do they provide for this fee? Membership in the elite club. It's what we do in higher education. Seriously, that's it. We get on the list. We get on the list. We get the stamp of approval. We already have New Hampshire's stamp of approval, but now we get the federal DOE stamp of approval. That's it. That's it. That's what you get. We get no services. We get no support. We get that, and also lots of reporting responsibilities. Oh, hey, and in addition to that, we also would have been obligated to ask their permission. We have to send them a proposal every time we want to offer a new course at Signum University. Just not a new program, a new class. We'd have to ask their permission and justify it. I was not looking forward to that. But in any case, that's Yep. Okay. Yes, Eric, I was shocked when I discovered that. The level of micromanagement involved. I could not believe that. I mean, I knew that if we wanted to add like a new degree program, that we'd have to, run that past them, right? We'd have to propose that to them and get it approved to be included within our accreditation, et cetera, et cetera. But new classes? Are you for real? And if we're going to be justifying, like on what? Anyway, yeah. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So this is where we are. This is where we have come to. And this is why I am so excited. I am so excited not to pretend to be normal anymore. I am so excited just to move forward with aggressively reinventing the concept of the university. I am beyond excited to move forward into filling in this gap that traditional higher education has freely left in our society. If nobody else in higher education wants to teach all of the postgraduates in the world, of which, incidentally, there are many, and the demographic cliff ain't going to hit them nearly as sharply, let me add. If no one else is going to serve those people, by golly, we will. And I am excited to do that. Okay, so what comes next? What's the plan? I said just before I stopped that we at Signum have given the future of higher education a foothold. But at this point, it is little more than a foothold. For Signum to live up to its promise, for Signum to achieve its vision of radically increasing learning opportunities for folks, for Signum to fulfill its purpose of sharing joy with as many people as possible, we need to grow. Signum has been blessed with a marvelous community of supporters. You folks who are listening live, the folks who donate to support Signum University are the very heart of this community. The dedication and persistence of our Signum community is a marvel. The community that we have had and maintained and that has nourished and cherished us for more than a decade, almost a decade and a half now, it is the marvel of the higher education world. When I told our story in our accreditation review, at the very beginning of the day, when we had our site visit, the opening thing was, they asked me to tell them our founding story. So I did. When later in the day, I met the chair of the evaluating committee for our one-on-one discussion, the very first thing she said to me was, "That was the most remarkable founding story I have ever heard. I have never heard anything even vaguely like that." And what's different about Signum is always been, we've been founded on people, right? We've started with people. We don't start with money. Most schools start with money. We started with people. And we have kept the people. And you have stayed with us and been learning and growing with us for so many years. We love you very much, and we will always love you best, I promise. But we need to reach more people. It's crucial. It is crucial that we expand our community, that we expand our Signum student body. Signum has scraped and skimped and squeezed through financially for 14 years now. We've never had an endowment, as I said. We have for 14 years made ends meet, barely. Year after year, we have combined our revenue from our deliberately low tuition fees with the annual fund consisting of the donations you all have generously given. And this has been enough for survival, and we have survived. And I'm super proud of that. But living just above the survival line is not a recipe for long-term stability. We want Signum to thrive and achieve security. We also, of course, want to share joy with even more people. It's impossible to see the impact that Signum has had on the lives of so many and not want to see that impact increase, to touch the lives of many more people. We share joy, and you can't have too much joy, as I've said before. Both of these things point in one direction: growth. Growth is what we need. If we grow, we'll make more money. Signum tuition is low because, as I mentioned before, it's designed for scale, which we've never actually achieved. If we can achieve higher scale enrollment, we can completely change Signum's financial picture. If we grow, we will be multiplying our impact on people. We've always been about people at Signum, and we measure our success in the people whose lives we enrich. There is no downside to multiplying our success thus measured. Now, let me make it clear what my goals are. Space will be, moving forward, our leading program. The modules and tutorials combined are the game-changing program for higher education. We're going to continue our graduate program, and our graduate program is going to continue to be awesome for all of the students who want that kind of deep dive, who want that kind of intensive graduate school experience. We're going to keep offering that, and it's going to keep being wonderful. But that is not where growth can realistically come. There just is not a large enough percentage of the population that needs that and wants that. Space is a totally different matter. As space grows, however, our other programs are going to grow as well. I fully expect many people who discover Signum University and get back into learning through the space program will kind of get the itch and want to go deeper and do more and end up in our graduate program. I certainly believe that many people involved in our space program are going to end up contributing to and enjoying consuming our content in the Collaboratory and our store. The content that Signum Studios and the Signum Press are creating. All of these things will grow. Our events will grow too in this way. But for growth milestones, I'm going to focus on our total monthly enrollment in space. This is my number. This is my dashboard indicator for Signum's growth as we move forward. How many people are enrolled in Signum in space, modules and tutorials combined, every month on average? Because almost everything that we do in space is monthly. Even the programs which are multiple, like, let's learn Latin in a year and that kind of thing, are still like, that's 12 months worth of modules, right? So we can still measure it that way. So let me show you where I want to go. Brace yourself. Our current space enrollment, monthly average, is around 100, leaning closer to 120 in recent months. Right around 100, and we've been there for a while. This is fantastic, by the way. Every single month, 100 people are finding joy in space, and it's been phenomenal. My first goal is to double that. I want to see us get to 200. I'd love to see that within a year from now, but we'll see. We'll see. That's the first milestone, doubling that to 200. After that, 500. I want to see space up to 500. Our third goal, 1,000. Fourth goal, 10,000. 10,000 students a month. That's what I consider growth. When I talk about space being the higher education answer for people, filling in the gap, offering to do the thing, succeeding in doing the thing that higher education is not even attempting to do. That's what it looks like. Now, does that seem outlandish? 10,000 students a month in space? It doesn't seem outlandish to me. If we had 10,000 students at Signum University, we wouldn't even be considered a large university in America. Many universities, very many universities, have more than 10,000 students. And what's more, recall that the other universities with their 10,000 students or more are drawing their students from a far narrower pool than we are. Right? The 10,000 students or 20,000 students or 50,000 students that many colleges have, many universities have, are primarily drawing those 10, 20, 50,000 students from the set of people, most of whom are 18 to 22 years old, who need a bachelor's degree. That, in turn, is a small subset of the American population and the world population. Our market, right, we are drawing our students from not that small population, but from everybody but that small population, essentially. And again, for us to draw 10,000 students from that larger pool, we still wouldn't even be considered large. I don't consider 10,000 students a month anywhere close to our ceiling for space. Now, what about timing? I'm not going to tie us to specific times just yet. I'm not going to say, so these are my milestones that I'm aiming for. I'm not going to project forward and be like, I predict that we will meet goal number 4. We will have 10,000 students by this date. I'm not going to say that right now. There are a lot of factors that can change that. What I am excited to do is set our next goal, knowing the goals that we have in mind with the plan, designed to achieve all of our milestones and to achieve them as quickly as we can. But I can tell you in general that I'm looking to hit goal number 4. This is not a 20-year goal. This is not and someday when our grandchildren are running things, but no. I'm looking to hit goal number 4. I'm looking to hit 10,000 students a month in 5 to 7 years or so. That's the ballpark that I'm talking about. So, okay. Well, that sounds fun. Is there a catch? Well, yeah, in fact, there's a catch 22. There have been very many of these along our path. Indeed, the road of the accreditation process is paved with catch-22s, as I have found. And I could tell you many stories about that, but I won't. But of course, the catch-22 to which I'm referring is, of course, one which won't surprise very many of you, right? In order to have more money and achieve financial security, we must grow. But in order to grow, we need more money. Let me talk about this a little bit more. In one sense, this is obvious, right? If we want to achieve the kind of growth that I've outlined, we're going to need to do more marketing, and that's going to take some money. Certainly more money than we have ever spent on marketing at Signum. And when you are living at the barely above survival place that we've been at Signum, it's hard to beef up your marketing budget. It's really hard when you're already kind of on starvation diet in a lot of ways. But there's more to it than that. Signum has survived as long as we have, not only through the generosity of you, our donors, but through the perseverance and self-sacrifice of dozens of people who've been working on Signum staff. We are understaffed at Signum University, radically understaffed in some areas, and our staff is underpaid. Our staff is long overdue for pay increases that we have not been able to afford. One cannot, well, in any case, I refuse to wave my hand and say, okay, people who are already overstretched and underpaid, now do even more so that we can grow. And don't worry, after that, I'll pay you more. No, that's not what we're going to do. Growth starts, it has to start, with increasing our staff and our staff pay. That's a big part. So it's not just money for marketing campaigns. It's also money for staff and staff pay. So here's the plan. Every year, as you know, because you're here, we've been collecting donations for our annual fund. The annual fund has kept us alive, and we will continue to need it no matter what happens. Every year, we will continue to ask you to support the annual fund to help us to keep the lights on at Signum University. This year, we're adding a second fund, a multi-year giving campaign that we call the Growth Fund. It's pretty simple. Kind of what it says on the tin, right? Now, let me explain the difference between the annual fund and the growth fund. And let me do that by going back to our quasi-allegorical image for a moment here. Signum University, as I say, has been we've been a tent encampment, right? We've been a traveling tent city. The annual fund is what keeps the tent city running. If we didn't have the annual fund, if we did not achieve our annual fund goals, we wouldn't be able to keep doing the awesome things that we do, even though we're doing them in tents, right? And the people who have come to our tents in order to take our classes and enjoy our stuff have not minded that we've been under canvas ceilings, and are very grateful. They are very grateful for the support of those activities that the annual fund has provided. The growth fund, by contrast, the growth fund is going to enable us, again, working within our metaphor here, within our quasi-allegory. The growth fund will enable us to start laying foundations for the larger buildings we will need, not just when we grow, but in order to grow. As anyone who's been involved in, this kind of organizational thing knows, whether maybe it's a school, maybe it's a church, maybe it's, a store or business. If there isn't room, right? People won't stay, right? We need to build a capacious space, right? Again, I'm speaking metaphorically. Signum is not building a campus, and we're not going to be actually building buildings. That is contrary to the point of Signum University and the educational opportunities we're trying to provide to people. But metaphorically, I think you see what I mean. So we're going to have the two funds, the annual fund and the growth fund. This doesn't mean that we're just going to make a second donation form, right? If you go to signumuniversity.org/donate, you will find our donation form. And incidentally, I quite hope you will go to signumuniversity.org/donate and find our donation form and make a donation. And when you do, that will go to our annual fund. That is what we're going to do. And we're not going to put a separate form next to that and be like, this one's for the annual fund and this one's for the growth fund. The growth fund is not going to be crowdfunded in the way that we've always done with our annual fund. The annual fund is the support of the community by the community, and it shall always be so. That is what the annual fund is and will always be. The growth fund is going to consist of a new set of partnerships, mostly individuals, I imagine, though possibly corporations as well. Partnerships with people who value what Signum provides and want to see us provide it to many more people. People who are excited to walk with us into a new future for higher education. These people who choose to partner with us through support of our growth fund are people whose essential contribution to the future of Signum University we will very gladly recognize, and whose input and suggestions we will enthusiastically welcome. So, where do we start? Well, we start this year. This year, fiscal year 2026, it's called fiscal year 2026 because our fiscal year follows the academic year, basically. So our fiscal year at Signum begins on August 1st and ends on July 31st. So we're already in fiscal year 26. It is business convention to call the fiscal year by the year in which it ends if it spans 2 calendar years. Anyway, we're in fiscal year 2026. This year will be year 1 of the Growth Fund. And my initial goals for the Growth Fund are quite modest. Here are the goals. So these are overall fundraising goals for this year. The annual fund goal, as I said at the launch, event several weeks back is $120,000. I want to raise $120,000 for our annual fund to help to keep our programs running. Our growth fund for this year, I would like to raise another $120,000. That's it. Not any more grandiose than that yet. So the total giving that we are asking for this fiscal year between now and July, well, from what we've already had and through the end of the fiscal year, July 31st, is $240,000. Now, maybe this doesn't seem modest to you, right? Maybe you're like, hey, I mean, especially those of you who have been around for a while, maybe like, weren't you just a couple years ago setting annual goals of like $85,000? Yeah, that wasn't that long ago, right? 240 seems like a kind of a big jump. Well, I can give you two reasons why I'm confident in these initial goals and why I don't think that they seem immodest to me. Reason number one is the trend of our recent annual fund giving, and this is just all about how awesome you guys are. In fiscal year 2023, so 3 years ago, so this is the 22 to 23 academic year, we raised $101,987 in the annual fund. The year before last, fiscal year 2024, we raised $177,000. Last year, in fiscal year 2025, so ending this past July 31st, we raised $199,000. I didn't notice that at the time, or I might have donated $1,000 myself just to hit the the milestone. But that's what it was, $199,000 and $59. There we were. So this past year, in total giving, we raised almost $200,000. So in fact, the increase from last year's giving is quite modest. It's only $40,000 more. So we're looking at a 20% increase off of last year's giving. And that, again, embraces not just our annual fund, but our growth fund as well. Reason number two why I don't think that $240,000 total dollars of giving is an immodest goal for the year is this year's giving. So this year, so far, the annual fund has already raised $84,556. We have $84,000 in donations and pledges already given to us from August 1st of this year through today. Well, through yesterday, technically. And this is, when I say gifts and pledges, one of the things I primarily mean there are, so if you make a monthly donation, you can set up, of course, through our donation fund, a monthly donation, which is marvelous. Many, many people do this, and several hundred people do this. And it is so good. It is so wonderful to have that steady source of donation income. And so when we start a new year, we project that, so like what your monthly contributions will add up to over the course of the whole year counts as a pledge towards this year's annual fund. So that stuff is included in this number. In gifts received and pledges, we've raised almost $85,000 already. So as you see, we're almost 3/4 of the way to the annual fund goal, and it's only November. We still have more than 8 full months to go within the fiscal year. So I'm feeling confident in hitting that goal. The growth fund, well, I'm launching that today. The growth fund was announced about 10 minutes ago. And yet we've already received $33,000 in donations. These are, of course, primarily from board members of Signum University, to whom I'm very grateful. So they had advanced notice that the growth fund was happening. So this is just a few people who have begun to give to the growth fund. So again, after 10 minutes, we're already 25% of the way there to our giving goal for the growth fund. And what are the larger parameters for the growth fund? And I said it's going to be a multi-year giving campaign. Well, again, time frame, I'm not being really rigid about that right now. I'm gonna be giving updates, and we're gonna be checking in with our milestones and see how we're doing. But as I said before, I project the basic time frame about 5 to 7 years. That's what I'm expecting. We'll see. And I will be, as we move forward, I will be laying out the steps in front of us as clearly as I can. And I will have much more information on those as we see how we proceed through the early stages. Overall goal, total fund, what I plan to raise, what I believe we can raise in the next 5 to 7 years for the growth fund, about $5 million. That's my preliminary goal for the growth fund. As I said, I'm not tying it down to a schedule, but the sooner we raise money like this, the more rapid we can expect our growth curve to be. The sooner we're going to be achieving our goals, and our goals are all about, a lot of schools go on, campaigns like this, multi-year campaigns like this, to raise money to build buildings, right? And then several years later, they're needing more millions of dollars to repair those buildings, right? Signum has the gift of financial efficiency. If we had annually the budget line allocated, if we could have for Signum's total budget, the budget line that is allocated for the average college campus to things like heating oil alone, like if we just have their utilities bill as our total budget, we could do amazing things. You'd be astounded at what we could accomplish. If the utilities bill of a normal college campus were our total budget, man, it would be incredible what we could do. Staff people, are always the largest portion of any university budget. At Signum, it's like 95% of our budget. It'll be even higher now that we're done paying accreditation process fees. But our people, our Signum University is our people. And all of the money that we raise, again, 95% of the money that we raise is now, of course, we are going to be spending more in marketing. I should admit that, right? Yeah. So that number but still, it's going to be well over 90% of the budget that we spend is going to be spent on people. So all of the money that's given to Signum is supporting our people who make our classes happen, who make our learning opportunities happen. And so the wonderful people who work at Signum, those are the people who are going to be supported by the money that we're going to be raising. And the growth money that we need is to increase both to support better the people that we have, to pay them better, which I so look forward to doing. That will be my favorite day ever. And then to increase the number of people that we can provide job opportunities to as well. I love hiring people. Anyway, it's all about the people at Signum University. None of the money that is donated to us is going to be spent on depreciable assets like buildings. That's not what we do, and it isn't how we operate. Okay, now I'm going to move on to answering questions again. But before I do, let me start with a few obvious questions that many of you probably have. So here's question number 1. I'm confused now. If I want to support Signum University by setting up a monthly donation or giving a one-time annual gift, what am I supposed to do? Where will it go? How do I tell you where I want it to go? If there's the growth fund, there's the annual fund. The answer? Bless you and thank you. Go to our normal form at signumuniversity.org/donate and make your donation in the normal way. Your donation will go to the annual fund, and you will help make all of our ongoing programs possible. That's going to be wonderful. Question number 2. I'd like to make a contribution to the growth fund. How do I do, if there's no form, how do I make a donation to the growth fund? If you would like to partner with Signum by making a donation of more than $5,000, you should send an email to donate@signumu.org and indicate that you're interested in contributing to the growth fund. Smaller donations, smaller than $5,000 in a year, enormously welcome. And our annual fund for many years, the $200,000 we raise, The majority of it is in donations that are smaller, many of them much smaller. Our average donation is only a couple $100s a year. Those donations come together and add up and make up our annual fund, and that is wonderful. The growth fund, as I said, is designed to be larger scale partnerships. So if you are interested in donating $5,000 or more to Signum University, more than $5,000, again, send an email, and the email you can send to is donate@signumu.org. You could email me as well, corey.olsen@signumu.org. Send the email to donate and indicate that you're interested in contributing to the growth fund. That's it. We'll be in touch. And because we would love to learn more about your interest in working with us. You don't need to use the web form. When you make your donation, we'll help you set up a direct transfer of funds, which will be easier, and we'll also ensure that your donation goes to Signum. 100% of it goes to Signum. If your donation is for $5,000 or less, and again, if so, thank you very much. Just use the regular form, and your donation will go to the annual fund, which is also very necessary, both for our growth and our survival. Should our annual fund exceed the $120,000 goal, the surplus, I'm going to roll the surplus into the growth fund. So all of your donations will absolutely help the cause. Question number 3. I'd like to help support the growth fund, but I don't have that kind of money to give. Wish I did, but I don't. Is there any way I can contribute to the growth campaign if I don't have more than $5,000 to donate? Absolutely there is. The more people out there who are talking about Signum University, about what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, the better. Signum needs more exposure. There are too many people in the world who have never heard of Signum University and what we're doing. And the more people hear about who we are and what we're doing, the greater the acceleration of both our growth and our fundraising. If you have a particular suggestion that you'd like to make, maybe you'd like to make an introduction to somebody that you know who you think might be interested in supporting Signum at a high level. Email us. Again, send us an email, donate@signumu.org, and we will happily receive any suggestion or any invitation or introduction that you might like to make. Okay. Other questions? All right. Okay, quick questions. Very good, very good. No, JJ, I am not, in fact, planning to give rings to people who establish partnerships with us. That is, I toyed with the idea, but I figured, maybe that wouldn't work out so well. Maybe there are reasons to think that's not a great call. Other questions? Awesome. We're coming close to the end of our time here. The end of the time that I have allotted to the State of the University address. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. I encourage you to share share recordings of this video. We'll probably have segments of this video out that you could share with folks as well if people are interested to learn about what we're doing at Signum University. We are excited to spread the word. It is time for Signum University to grow, and that is going to be awesome. And I know that you guys are going to be a really, really big part of that. Thank you so much for everything that you do, for all of the donations that have made our survival possible, and for all the role that so many of you are going to play in the road that lies ahead and our growth and achieving the amazing things that I am confident that Signum University has the ability to achieve. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to stop the stream for a moment so that we can have a new segment. In just a moment, I'm going to be back. Here's what's coming up next. What's coming up next? Right away, in just a couple minutes, is going to be a session with Laurel Stevens, Signum's Director of Events and the Queen of Mythmoot. And we're going to be talking about events at Signum University. And in particular, we have a very exciting announcement to make about Mythmoot this year. Mythmoot is coming up next June, as always, and there will be a big announcement about it in this next session with Laurel. So Laurel and I will be back in just a few minutes and at right around 2:30, for which I am almost shockingly punctual. The next session after that at 3:15-ish, 3:15 to 3:30 area, I'm going to have some of the folks from our graduate program join me, and we're going to talk about the graduate program at Signum University. We'll be describing what it is, what we do, what's coming up, and what's happening in the graduate school of Signum University. So that's going to be at 3:30. We'll go until about 4 or so. At 4 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to have a session on our creative areas, on the Signum Press and Signum Studios. Maggie Park, director of Signum Studios, is going to be joining me live for that. We're going to talk about the Signum Press. We're going to talk about Signum Studios. We'll talk about the Collaboratory and what we do, all of the ways in which we are channeling the enthusiasm and the excitement and the energy of our learning programs and harnessing that for creativity. For sub-creation of stuff. It's really, really great. So that's what we're going to be talking about at 4. And then at 5 o'clock, at 5 p.m., I'm going to do a special session, which I hope you will join me for. I'm going to do a special teaching session. I am going to do a readings and a discussion of primary texts on Tom Bombadil. I want to sit down and take a nice long look at Tom Bombadil. Most of the time when people talk about Tom Bombadil, who is Tom Bombadil, it's really tempting to go straight to the secondary sources, by which I mean, I consider Tolkien's letters a secondary source when it comes to his text. There's somebody talking about his text. They're him talking about his text, but they're not the texts themselves. They're not the stories. They're him talking about the stories, right? Tolkien has lots of interesting things to say and does say many interesting things in his letters about Tom Bombadil. When people have the Tom Bombadil discussion, they generally start there. They generally go straight to the letters. Most of the conversations are about the letters. I want to approach Tom Bombadil differently. I want to look at the primary texts of Tom Bombadil. I want to go through and read at some length, by the way. We're not just going to look at little passages. I want to look at long passages we're going to look at the early 1934, the early version of the poem that was published in the Oxford Magazine in 1934. And then we're going to look at a long passage from The Fellowship of the Ring, which he published in 1954. And we're going to be doing some comparison and contrast of Tom Bombadil and try to answer the question based on what we see just in these primary texts. What's the story with Tom Bombadil? What is Tolkien's interest in this? What is this character about? What is his story about? And therefore, why does his story intersect with the story of the hobbits in the Fellowship of the Ring? What does it give to it? What does it provide to it? What does it have to do with it? How does it relate to it? And of course, if we get around to it, we may also think a little bit about how Tom Bombadil's contact with the Lord of the Rings then impacts Tom Bombadil himself. All right, so that is what we're going to do at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. That's going to be the little mini class on Tom Bombadil. All right, so that's what's coming up. Graduate program next in -2 minutes. Events coming up. Events and Mythmoot coming up in -2 minutes. The graduate program at 3:15. The press and studios programs are sub-creative programs at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and then a mini course on Tom Bombadil at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's the plan for the rest of the day. All right. So as I said, I'm going to stop the stream now. And then we will pick up again with the events program in probably give it 5 minutes. We'll start a few minutes late. I hope you can recoup from that surprise. But we're still doing pretty well. I still consider us on time. So 5 minutes from now, and we'll start back up again. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. See you soon.